My mother wanted to shoot me because I framed my sister, the golden child for which she was imprisoned. Hey everyone, I need some advice and maybe a place to vent. This is going to be a long one, so bear with me. I, 33F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Julia, 30F. Julia is the golden child in our family, and it's been a source of pain for me since we were kids. Growing up, our parents always favored Julia. She was the pretty one, the talented one, the one who could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was the older sister who always seemed to fall short of their expectations. My earliest memories are filled with moments where I was left feeling invisible next to her. One particular memory stands out vividly. I was around 8 years old, and it was my birthday. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, dreaming about the cake, the presents, and the attention. But as soon as Julia entered the room, all the focus shifted to her. She was only 5 at the time, but she had this knack for stealing the spotlight. She started singing a song she'd learned in kindergarten, and everyone applauded her, completely forgetting it was my special day. My parents didn't even notice the tears welling up in my eyes as I watched them fawn over her. This was a pattern that repeated throughout our childhood. Julia got the best clothes, the most attention, and all the praise. I remember once getting a B on a math test and feeling proud of myself. But when I showed it to my parents, they barely glanced at it before asking Julia about her day. She had colored a picture in school, and that was deemed more impressive. The worst part was that Julia was well aware of her status in the family. She wasn't a malicious child, but she knew how to manipulate situations to her advantage. If we ever fought, which siblings often do, she would cry and run to our parents, who would always take her side. I was always the one who got scolded, no matter the situation. As we grew older, the dynamics didn't change much. Julia excelled in everything she did. She was a straight-A student, a star athlete, and later, a social butterfly with a wide circle of friends. I, on the other hand, struggled academically and socially. I was shy, introverted, and had a hard time making friends. Our parents often compared us, always unfavorably for me. "Why can you be more like Julia?" was a common refrain in our household. High school was particularly tough. Julia was a freshman when I was a senior, and she immediately became popular. She joined the cheerleading squad, was elected class president, and had boys lining up to date her. I was the nerdy senior who barely had any friends and spent most of my time in the library. It felt like my entire existence was overshadowed by her. One incident in high school still haunts me. There was a big dance coming up, and I had finally mustered the courage to ask a boy I liked to go with me. To my surprise and delight, he said yes. But a week before the dance, he canceled, saying he had asked someone else. That someone else turned out to be Julia. She didn't know I had asked him, but it didn't matter. She got to go to the dance with him while I stayed home, heartbroken and alone. After high school, I went to a local community college while Julia got a scholarship to a prestigious university. Our parents were so proud of her, and rightfully so, but it stung to see how little they seemed to care about my achievements. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my tuition, while Julia's expenses were covered by our parents. They visited her often, attended her college events, and constantly talked about how well she was doing. Meanwhile, I was left to fend for myself, both emotionally and financially. I eventually graduated with a degree in nursing, while Julia went on to law school. By then, I had learned to stop seeking my parents' approval. I moved out, got a job, and tried to build a life for myself. But the pain of those early years never really left me. Julia and I stayed in touch, but our relationship was strained. She was always the successful, beautiful sister, and I was just me. Fast forward to a few years ago. I met a wonderful man, Alex, and we got married. For the first time in my life, I felt truly valued and loved. Alex knew about my family dynamics and was incredibly supportive. He helped me see my worth beyond my parents' and sister's shadow. We bought a house, and I started feeling like I could finally leave the past behind. But then, Julia re-entered my life in a way I never expected. She had finished law school and was working at a prestigious firm. She got engaged to a man who seemed perfect in every way. Our parents were over the moon and couldn't stop talking about the upcoming wedding. I tried to be happy for her, but the old feelings of inadequacy and resentment resurfaced. Julia asked me to be her maid of honor. I was shocked. We weren't close, and I wondered why she would want me in such an important role. But she insisted, saying she wanted us to rebuild our relationship. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping this might be a chance to heal old wounds. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Julia was a bridezilla, demanding and controlling. Every decision had to go through her, and she often dismissed my ideas and suggestions. It was clear that she hadn't changed much. She still needed to be the center of attention. But I gritted my teeth and went along with it, wanting to support her and maybe, just maybe, earn some of her approval. Then came the bridal shower. It was a lavish affair, organized by our parents and attended by Julia's many friends and colleagues. I felt out of place and uncomfortable, but I put on a brave face. During the event, our mom gave a speech praising Julia to the skies. She mentioned how proud they were of her achievements and how beautiful she looked. I stood there feeling invisible once again. But then something unexpected happened. Julia took the microphone and started speaking. She thanked everyone for coming and then turned to me. She said, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge my sister, who has always been there for me. I know I haven't always shown it, but I appreciate everything she's done. She's strong, kind, and an amazing person. I'm lucky to have her as my sister." I was stunned. This was the first time Julia had ever publicly acknowledged me like this. I felt tears welling up in my eyes, and for a moment I thought things might actually change between us. Maybe this was a turning point. However, the goodwill was short-lived. A week before the wedding, Julia called me in a panic. She had lost the family heirloom necklace that our grandmother had given us, and she was supposed to wear it on her wedding day. She was hysterical, and I rushed over to help her search for it. We turned her apartment upside down but couldn't find it. 2 days later, Julia called me again, this time accusing me of taking the necklace. She said I must have stolen it out of jealousy. I was shocked and hurt. I had done nothing but try to help her, and now she was accusing me of theft. Our parents believed her, of course. They always believed Julia. I was devastated. In the end, Julia found the necklace in a drawer she had forgotten about, but the damage was done. She never apologized for accusing me, and our parents didn't either. The wedding went ahead, but I felt like a stranger in my own family. After the wedding fiasco, Alex and I decided to focus on building our own lives and family. Alex, who had always been tech-savvy, started exploring ways to earn money online. Initially, it was just a side hustle, but soon he hit upon a successful formula and began making thousands of dollars. Within a year, his online ventures were bringing in tens of thousands, and our financial situation drastically improved. With our newfound wealth, we bought a beautiful mansion in a prestigious neighborhood. Alex surprised me with a Bugatti as a symbol of our success, and soon after we were blessed with 2 beautiful children. Life was perfect, or so it seemed. However, my parents remained indifferent to our achievements. They visited occasionally but always seemed more interested in Julia's life, despite her recent troubles with her husband. Julia, after her marriage fell apart, had been living on her own and was struggling with her career. She had been laid off from her prestigious law firm and was barely making ends meet. Seeing our prosperity only added fuel to her jealousy. One day, she came over under the pretense of wanting to reconnect and spend time with her niece and nephew. At first, I believed her. I thought she was genuinely trying to mend our broken relationship, but it didn't take long to realize her true intentions. She began showing up unannounced, often when Alex was home alone. She'd dress provocatively and make subtle, flirtatious comments towards him. Alex, being the loyal husband he is, immediately told me about her behavior. We were both shocked and disgusted by her actions. Instead of confronting her directly, we decided to devise a plan to expose her true colors. We set up hidden cameras in the living room and other common areas to catch her in the act. It didn't take long before we had the evidence we needed. One afternoon, while I was supposedly out running errands, Julia made her move. She sidled up to Alex, placing her hand on his arm and whispering suggestive things into his ear. "Come on, Alex," she purred. "You deserve someone who truly appreciates you, someone like me." Alex played along just enough to keep her talking. "Julia, you need to stop. I love my wife, and this is incredibly inappropriate." But Julia persisted, leaning in closer. "She doesn't have to know. It'll be our little secret." That was the moment we had been waiting for. Alex firmly pushed her away and said, "Julia, I'm serious. You need to leave. This is wrong on so many levels. We captured the entire encounter on video. With the evidence in hand, we decided it was time to take action. First, we called a family meeting, including Julia's husband, who had been in the dark about her behavior. When everyone had gathered, we played the video. The room was silent as the footage played. Julia's husband's face turned red with anger, and my parents looked absolutely stunned. When the video ended, there was a moment of tense silence before Julia's husband stood up. "Julia, how could you? After everything, you try to seduce your own sister's husband." His voice was filled with disbelief and hurt. Julia stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, but there was no denying what we had all seen. Our parents looked at her with a mix of disappointment and disgust. "Julia, we trusted you. We always believed you were the better daughter, but this is beyond forgiveness," my mother said, her voice trembling. My father shook his head. "You've brought shame to our family. I don't even know who you are anymore." Julia's husband wasted no time in filing for divorce. He moved out that very day, taking their 2 children with him. My parents, who had always put Julia on a pedestal, were forced to confront the reality of her actions. They distanced themselves from her, unable to look at her the same way again. Julia's world came crashing down. She lost her husband, her children, and the support of our parents. She tried to reach out to me, but I couldn't find it in myself to forgive her so easily. The wounds were too fresh, and the betrayal too deep. As for Alex and me, we continued to build our life together, stronger than ever. Julia's betrayal, while painful, had ultimately brought us closer. We knew we could face anything as long as we had each other. Life moved on, but the scars of the past remained. My parents, who had always favored Julia, struggled to come to terms with her actions. They visited less frequently, and when they did, it was clear they were still grappling with their disappointment. They tried to act as if everything was normal, but the tension was palpable. Julia, on the other hand, was trying to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She had lost her job and was struggling to make ends meet. Her attempts to reconcile with her husband had failed, and he had filed for full custody of their children. She was alone and desperate. One day she showed up at our door looking more haggard and broken than I had ever seen her. She pleaded with me to let her in, to give her a chance to explain. Against my better judgment, I agreed. She sat at our kitchen table, tears streaming down her face as she confessed everything. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I've been jealous of you for so long. I saw how happy you were, how successful, and I couldn't stand it. I thought if I could take Alex away, I'd feel better. But I was wrong. I've lost everything." Her words hit me hard. For so long, I had seen Julia as the favored one, the one who had it all. I never realized how deeply her insecurities ran. I felt a mix of pity and anger, but mostly, I felt tired. Tired of the drama, tired of the pain, and tired of the endless cycle of rivalry and resentment. "I don't know what to say, Julia," I replied. "You've hurt me in ways I can't even begin to describe, but I can't keep living with this anger. It's poisoning me, and it's poisoning our family." Julia nodded, tears still streaming down her face. "I understand. I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I just wanted you to know how sorry I am." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of our shared history hanging heavy in the air. Eventually, Julia left, and I was left with my thoughts. Could I ever truly forgive her? Could we ever move past this? In the weeks that followed, I focused on my family and my own healing. Alex was a rock, supporting me every step of the way. We talked about Julia, about the past, and about what the future might hold. Slowly, I began to let go of some of the anger and resentment. I realized that holding on to it wasn't helping anyone, least of all myself. Julia continued to struggle, but she also began to make changes. She started going to therapy, found a job, and began to rebuild her relationship with her children. It wasn't easy, and there were setbacks along the way, but she was trying, and that at least was something. As for my parents, they remained distant. The golden child had fallen, and they didn't know how to deal with it. They still saw Julia occasionally, but it was clear that things would never be the same. They visited us less and less, and when they did, there was a palpable tension. It was as if they didn't know how to relate to me without the familiar dynamic of favoritism. One sunny afternoon, as I watched my children play in our beautiful backyard, I realized something important. Despite everything, I was happy. I had a loving husband, wonderful children, and a life I was proud of. Julia's actions had caused pain, but they had also led me to a place of strength and resilience. In the end, life went on. The wounds of the past would never fully heal, but they didn't have to define the future. Julia and I began to rebuild our relationship slowly and cautiously. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was a start. For now, I chose to focus on the present and the future. The past had its place, but it no longer held me captive. Alex and I continued to build our life together, filled with love, laughter, and the occasional challenge. Our new home was everything we had ever dreamed of. The mansion was spacious, luxurious, and perfect for raising a family. The kids loved their new rooms and the large backyard where they could play. Alex and I were happier than ever, and for a while it seemed like we had left all the drama behind. Part 3. The Unexpected Turn. Life seemed to have settled into a pleasant rhythm. Julia and I worked hard on our relationship, and it slowly began to improve. She apologized sincerely, and I saw genuine change in her behavior. We started meeting for coffee, talking about our lives, and even planning family outings together. It was a relief to finally feel like I had a sister I could trust and rely on. Meanwhile, Alex's career continued to soar. He decided to take an early retirement offer from his tech company, which came with a massive payout. We were now financially secure beyond our wildest dreams, and Alex was eager to spend more time with the family and pursue some personal projects. However, the peace we had worked so hard to achieve was soon shattered. My mother, who had always shown a preference for Julia, seemed unable to accept the changes in our family dynamics. She couldn't shake the belief that I had somehow set Julia up with the video evidence. The idea festered in her mind, and she became increasingly distant and resentful. One morning, as I was preparing breakfast, the police arrived at our door with a search warrant. They found several items in our garage that I had never seen before. Parts of a stolen car that had been reported missing months ago. I was in shock as they handcuffed me and took me into custody. I kept thinking it was a horrible mistake. Alex, who was away on a business trip, rushed back home as soon as he heard the news. He immediately hired one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the country, a brilliant and expensive lawyer named Rachel Hargrove. Rachel assured us that she would get to the bottom of this and clear my name. The court date came quickly. In the hours leading up to the trial, Rachel worked tirelessly, combing through every detail and interviewing anyone who might have information. It was during these investigations that we uncovered the horrifying truth. My own mother had orchestrated the entire setup. Apparently, my mother had contacts in the underworld who helped her obtain the stolen car parts. She had planted them in our garage, hoping to ruin my reputation and, in her twisted way, teach me a lesson for what she perceived as my betrayal of Julia. She couldn't accept that her golden child was at fault and chose to believe I was the manipulative one. The trial was intense. The prosecution presented their case, confident they had enough evidence to convict me. But Rachel was prepared. She presented irrefutable evidence showing how the car parts had been placed in our garage without our knowledge. She also brought forward a witness, one of my mother's accomplices, who testified that my mother had orchestrated the entire scheme. It took the jury only 2 hours to deliberate. They found me not guilty on all charges. I was free, but the ordeal had left a deep scar. My mother, on the other hand, wasn't as fortunate. The court sentenced her to 5 years in prison for fraud and conspiracy. The judge made it clear that her actions were not only illegal, but morally reprehensible. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. My mother's face was a mix of shock and fury. She had never imagined that her plan would backfire so spectacularly. As they led her away, she looked at me with eyes full of hatred. It was a painful moment, but I knew that justice had been served. In the aftermath of the trial, our family was left to pick up the pieces. Julia was devastated by our mother's actions and struggled with feelings of guilt and shame. She leaned on me for support, and for the first time, I felt like the older sister, the protector. Alex and I took some time to regroup and heal from the ordeal. We spent more time with our children, focusing on creating happy memories and ensuring they felt safe and loved. Our relationship grew even stronger, and we realized that no matter what challenges we faced, we would always have each other. Julia, determined to make amends for our mother's actions, worked hard to rebuild her life. She found a new job and even started dating again, but she remained close to us, appreciating the family support she had once taken for granted. As for my father, he struggled to come to terms with my mother's betrayal. He had always been more passive, going along with her strong personality, but this event shook him to his core. He visited her in prison, but their relationship was strained and distant. Life eventually found a new normal. Our family gatherings were smaller but filled with genuine love and connection. We talked openly about the past, the mistakes, and the lessons learned. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. Through it all, Alex remained my rock. His unwavering support and love kept me going even on the darkest days. His early retirement allowed him to spend more time with us, and he started a new venture that combined his tech expertise with his passion for helping others. We turned our focus to the future, creating new traditions and making sure our children grew up in a loving and supportive environment. The past would always be a part of our story, but it no longer defined us. 5 years had passed since the harrowing events that led to my mother's imprisonment. During those years, our lives had gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. Alex and I continued to thrive. Our children grew up happy and loved, and Julia became an integral part of our family, having fully mended our once broken relationship. Despite the pain of the past, we managed to create a peaceful and joyful life. Our family gatherings, though smaller, were filled with laughter and genuine connection. We often reflected on the past, acknowledging the lessons learned and the strength we found in each other. However, the peace we had built was shattered once again when my mother was released from prison. She had served her time, but the anger and resentment she harbored had not diminished. She was a different woman now, older and nearly blind, but her hatred for me had only grown stronger. Unbeknownst to us, my mother had been plotting her revenge. She believed that I had destroyed her life and she wanted to make me pay. One fateful day, she stole a shotgun from a local farm and set out to find me. Her plan was to catch me off guard and end my life. I had no idea of the danger that was looming. It was a sunny afternoon, and I had taken the children to the park. Alex was out running errands, and Julia was at work. I was sitting on a bench watching my kids play when I felt a sudden, sharp pain. I turned to see my mother standing a few feet away, the shotgun aimed directly at me. Her face was twisted in a mix of rage and determination. She screamed something incomprehensible and fired multiple shots in quick succession. Despite her failing eyesight and shaky hands, 2 bullets found their mark. One hit me in the buttock and the other struck my right leg. The pain was excruciating, and I fell to the ground, unable to move. The sound of gunfire attracted the attention of bystanders, who quickly called the police. My mother, seeing the commotion and realizing her plan had failed, tried to flee, but was quickly apprehended by the authorities. She was arrested and later charged with attempted murder, a crime that would see her sentenced to 10 years in prison. I was rushed to the hospital, where I underwent surgery to remove the bullets and repair the damage. The doctors assured Alex and Julia that I would make a full recovery, but the physical and emotional scars would take much longer to heal. During my 3-week stay in the hospital, Alex never left my side. He was my rock, providing unwavering support and strength. Julia visited every day, bringing me my favorite foods and keeping my spirits up with her stories and laughter. Their love and dedication were the pillars that kept me going through the darkest moments. In those long, quiet hours in the hospital, I had plenty of time to reflect on everything that had happened. The shock and betrayal I felt from my mother's actions were profound. I couldn't understand how she had let her hatred for me consume her to the point of attempting to take my life. But amidst the pain and confusion, there was also a deep sense of gratitude. I was alive, and I had a loving family that stood by me through thick and thin. Writing this post is my way of processing everything that has happened. It's a way to thank all of you who have supported me through this journey, who have offered kind words and encouragement when I needed it most. Your support has meant the world to me. The courtroom was tense during my mother's trial. The prosecution laid out the details of her crime, and the evidence against her was overwhelming. My mother sat there, a shadow of her former self, yet the anger and bitterness in her eyes were unmistakable. She showed no remorse, only a cold determination that made the entire situation even more tragic. The jury didn't take long to deliberate. Given the clear evidence of her premeditated actions, they found her guilty of attempted murder. The judge sentenced her to life in prison, emphasizing the severity of her crime and the betrayal of trust within our family. As she was led away, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. This was my mother, the woman who had once cared for me, now condemned by her own hatred and actions. Life after the trial was a slow process of healing. The physical wounds began to mend, but the emotional scars were deeper. Alex was incredible through it all, his unwavering support and love giving me the strength I needed. He juggled his work and caring for the kids, making sure they understood what had happened in a way that protected their innocence. Julia was equally amazing. Despite her own complicated relationship with our mother, she stood by me, offering comfort and understanding. She had truly changed, and our bond was stronger than ever. We leaned on each other, finding solace in our shared experiences and the hope for a better future. During my recovery, Alex and I had many long conversations about our life and what we wanted for the future. We decided to focus on creating a stable, loving environment for our children, ensuring they felt safe and cherished. Our home became a sanctuary, filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of family. The community's support was overwhelming. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out with kind words and gestures. It was a reminder of the goodness in people, and it helped restore my faith in humanity. I received countless messages from people who had followed our story, offering their support and sharing their own experiences of overcoming adversity. 3 weeks after the incident, I felt strong enough to write this post. It's a way to thank all of you who have supported me through this journey, who have offered kind words and encouragement when I needed it most. Your support has meant the world to me. Most of all, I want to thank my husband Alex and my sister Julia. Alex, you have been my anchor, my strength, and my greatest love. Your unwavering support and love have carried me through the darkest times. Julia, you have shown me what true forgiveness and redemption look like. Our bond is stronger than ever, and I am grateful every day for the sister you have become. Life is unpredictable, and the future is always uncertain. But with the love and support of those who matter most, I know I can face whatever comes my way. Thank you for being part of my journey. As I look forward, I am filled with hope. My mother's actions, while devastating, have not broken me. They have made me stronger, more resilient. I am determined to create a life filled with love, kindness, and compassion, and to ensure my children grow up knowing the importance of forgiveness and family.